Here is AOC, after having toured these facilities, these border concentration camps in June, and she is at the House Department of Homeland Security hearings. Is that what it is? And I think she's there testifying, not necessarily a member of the committee, because they had been on the trip, and here she is.
Much has been made about the fact that we have said that this is a manufactured crisis. And in many ways, it is manufactured in that it is wholly unnecessary. It is unnecessary to separate children from their families. It is unnecessary to have a policy to detain innocent women and families that have harmed no person and are legally seeking asylum in the United States of America. It is unnecessary to have a policy that calls children unaccompanied when they arrive with older brothers, sisters, and grandparents and treat them no differently than human traffickers. And in speaking of trafficking, it is completely unnecessary for this administration to choose to implement policies like metering and so-called remain in Mexico policies that dump innocent people in dangerous territories that puts them right in the crosshairs of human traffickers, right for picking. This is a manufactured crisis because the cruelty is manufactured. This is a manufactured crisis because there is no need for us to do this. When we took our tour of the border, one of the first things that we were told was that we were not allowed to speak to the migrants, that we were not allowed to have contact with them, that we shouldn't. And this was given for reasons of, quote, their safety or for the expediency of the tour. We went in and one of the officers attempted to sneak a photograph of myself and other congressional members. And at that point, we asked to enter one of the cells. We were allowed to speak to the women, and these are the women that we spoke to. It's their handwriting. And while we are being asked to speak only to officers, we are not getting the accounts of migrants, of their treatment, of what they are experiencing. And so when these women tell me that they were put into a cell and that their sink was not working, and we tested the sink ourselves and the sink was not working, and they were told to drink out of a toilet bowl, I believed them. I believed these women. I believed the canker sores that I saw in their mouths because they were only allowed to be fed unnutritious food. I believed them when they said they were sleeping on concrete floors for 2 months. I believed them. And what was worse about this, Mr. Chairman, was the fact that there were American flags hanging all over these facilities, that children were being separated from their parents in front of an American flag, that women were being called these names under an American flag.
It's stunning to watch these videos and to hear these stories and to know that this is official policy and that half the country, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, at least, does not care. Certainly, a significant percentage of the country has figured out a way to say this is the right thing. We're doing the right thing here. Like, I mean, are there vast swaths of people who can actually point to a single thing that has materially, that immigrants have materially impacted their lives for the worse? A single thing. And you're willing to put people in cages for what? It's just insane. It's insanity. It really is insanity. And, like I said earlier, like, I don't know how to articulate this without it sounding like, sort of like at arm's length, but I just wonder, like, at what point do we cross a threshold where we see images or become aware of what's going on? You know, because I mean, I feel like I said this like a year ago, but you know, this is not obviously this is not the Holocaust. But if you were going to do another mass extinction, or I should say extermination of people, this is one of the ways that you would go about doing it. This would be one of the early steps. Now, there's a lot of different branches you can head off from this point. But you certainly can't get to there without going through what we're going through now.
Yeah. The concentration camps didn't start explicitly as death camps.
No. And I don't know. I mean, like, what, you know, at what point, just step back and think about where we have gone from here. We knew that there were these facilities. Jeff Merkley was outside of one of them, wasn't allowed to go in, then got in, got a little peek, maybe. Well, what's the big deal? Oh, they're in cages. That's horrible. But then what's the big deal? Oh, there are people dying in there, but not many. Oh, they're in cages and they're not being fed very well, or they're covered with lice, or they're not allowed to shower. But what's the big deal? There, they have to drink out of some toilets. Well, now it's not their fault because, you know, they weren't designed for these things. I mean, at what point? One of the things that, as a kid going to Hebrew school, all of it was about, not all of it, but when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, we were only 30 years out. 30 years out from the Holocaust. We are more than 30 years out from when I was 7 or 8 and 9 and 10, I can tell you that. And we spent a lot of time as kids, probably more than we probably should have, frankly. But I think there was an awareness that, these concentration camp survivors, some of them were our Hebrew teachers, are going to die off. And there's not going to be any firsthand recollection. And so you better make sure that next generation has an awareness of it. Obviously, different people took different things from that understanding of that generation that went through it. But I just remember, the questions everybody had was like, how do people around there let this happen? How did people, whether they were in Germany or whether they were in Poland or other countries around there, they knew the camps were there. How did they sort of pretend like they didn't know what was going on? How did they allow that to happen in the run-up? Now, obviously, it's not completely analogous, but there's this weird dynamic where you start to see these pictures that come out of there. And I don't think that we have that we're in a country that is going to begin to exterminate people like this. But at what point do we say, oh, you know what? The systemic killing of people that we have rounded up is not the threshold where we engage. We're supposed to be a country that is, whatever, American exceptionalism. Where is the threshold where we engage? What would it be? What if people are kept in there for 50 days, 100 days, 200 days? What's the date? What's the date where we say, hey, there's something that is so wrong that we need to break the law to stop it? How many people have to die? How many kids have to be separated? What are the illnesses that need to go on there? It's not enough chicken pox. It's not enough lice infestations. What is the threshold where it's I mean,
It should have happened already.
I don't know.
For most
I
people.
really don't know. But I don't know what, like, what's the threshold of, to action or whatnot. I mean, I don't know what it is. I really don't. But there's this like sort of creepy ass feeling that when you start to see these images, you see Mike Pence go and just look over the pen as to, here are the specimens we've assembled in this cage. And what happens when one of them gets a little bit rowdy? Oh, the guy on the platform pulls them out. We pull them out. I don't know where they send them. Where do they put them? Where do they put those people? They've got 380, I think, in that pen. 380, he said, in another pen. Where's the extra space where they put the rowdy ones? Where do they put the rowdy ones when they pull them out?
They have been using solitary confinement on a lot of people.
They're not appreciative. We're giving you a cement floor to sleep on.
The only way you can get out of that cage full of people and your cement floor with the aluminum or tinfoil blanket is to be rowdy.
Yeah, and I wonder where that gets you. I mean, what is supposed to separate us as what is the unique element of our country? I mean, it's, I don't know.
I also really want to make the point that the images we're seeing right now are incredibly shocking, and I'm glad that a lot of people are waking up to it for the first time. But this has been building for a long time, right? The infrastructure for a lot of this stuff was laid during the Clinton administration. It was continued under Obama, and it is certainly accelerating. But the best way to get involved, because everyone wants to know how they can get involved, and there are definitely ways, the best way to get involved is to get involved in long-term immigrant justice organizing. And there are people who've been doing this work for a very long time and welcoming the increased attention. And I think that everyone else needs to follow their lead. And I think a lot of people are going to be looking to the left for answers now. And it seems like a good chance to draw out the connections in a very explicit way between the tech sector, capitalist accumulation, militarized borders, and state violence against human beings.
Besides race is RAICES, do you have any other groups you want to plug?
I got to look back at the thread, but certainly my friends in the DSA Immigrant Justice Working Group have been doing some really admirable work. I'm about to raise some funds for El Otro Lado, I believe, which is a organization that helps migrants in Tijuana. And I'm going to post a whole lot more really soon.